G'day, this is Drongo Jack here. I'm here today with country music singer Col I, and a lot of you may remember Col. He was the first Aboriginal to win a golden guitar in Tamworth back in 1973. So we'll lift it over to Col to get a bit of story out of him. Hey, what about that? Welcome, Col, to this interview.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Col, I believe you were from a large family, and can you tell us where you were born and where you grew up?
Yes, I was born and raised in a little country town called Brewarrina. Now, Brewarrina in Aboriginal means meeting place because there's a history about Brewarrina, and because my dad, he was born under an old gum tree at a place called Walgett. And I come from a very large family of 9 sisters and 2 brothers.
Now, where did you actually start singing, or learn to sing, and play guitar?
Well, as a young fellow, I used to lay down at night when I used to, I worked in the shearing sheds with Dad and fencing, and when I used to go back at night, I used to turn the wireless on. We called it wireless back in those days, and because I used to listen to a lot of the country singers like Slim Dusty and Tex Morton, a lot of those, and because later on then it changed a little bit over to a bit of the rock and roll, like Col Joy, Johnny O'Keefe, Jimmy Little, and a lot of those. And I always loved music. I knew I was gifted with a voice because my mum used to, she sang a lot of the gospel songs, and because we didn't have a church back in those days, it was always under an old gum tree where we congregated there and sang along with a lot of the old gospel songs.
Okay, and you did work with your father on various jobs in your hometown.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, well, he was a good shearer, a great shearer. He worked hard all his life, and used to go out fencing, and of course scrub cutting. I remember going out in the heat. Oh, it used to be so hot. We were out towards a place called Cunnamulla, and they called ring barking then because we used to have to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning and start working till about 9 or 10, and that was it, because it used to get too hot and you go back late in the afternoon, and because he was just a hard worker, Dad.
And I believe you did win a talent quest.
Yes, Maury 2VM, oh that's right, just before that, Brewarrina held this talent quest, and in the old town hall it was, and I was invited to go and sing on that in the talent quest, but I was a bit scared. I was frightened as anything. I said, "Oh no, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't do any good there." So they ended up pushing me in there, and I got up with the guitar. I still remember the 2 songs I sang. There was one of old Johnny Cash. It's called "Luther Played the Boogie." And I played an old one then of Johnny Horton. He sang that song called The Battle of New Orleans. So I did those 2, and yeah, I won it.
And you won it.
Yeah.
And I believe you went on tour on a travelling show. Tour after that.
Yes. Well, Maury held one. 2VM Maury. They held one in Walgett, and of course I was asked to go on that one. And I came equal first with the other lady who won it. She was an opera singer. Well, she didn't win. We both come first. And then I was invited to. It's a long story. There was a friend of mine who was a school teacher in Walgett at the time, and because this lady, she lived in Sydney. Her name was Mrs. Cox, and she was very interested in Aboriginal people. And of course, she went out looking for Aboriginal talent. And when she went to Walgett, he said, "There's a fella over in Brewarrina." He said, "I'd like you to meet him." She said, "Oh, I'd love to." So she came over with this little tape recorder then, and I sang some songs and put it down in the school it was, and she brought the tape back to Sydney, and he told her about me singing on back in those days, this show was, the fellow was called Willie Fennell, and he had the called Life at Dexter on the radio. It ran for a long, long time. And of course, when they heard the tape in Sydney, they said, "Yeah, no, he's got potential." And of course, Willie come up that way then, and I was invited to go on his show to tour down to Sydney, and that's how a lot of it started.
Now that was when you first come to Sydney. That was about 1962.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And what was your experience in the big smoke from the country?
Oh, I tell you what, I was so scared. You can imagine a little black fella from way up there coming down here with all this traffic, and I didn't know where I was going. I was, ready to go back home, but I remember my mother said to me when I was invited to come to Sydney, she said, you go down and if you don't like it, you can always come back home. But she said, if you can, stick it out as long as you can.
And you did?
Yeah, and I did. Yeah, thanks to her, God bless her.
Now, like Jimmy Little, and he was a great performer.
Yes.
And sadly he died a couple of years back.
That's right.
You came through at a time where blackfellas were rarely on radio or TV.
That's right, yeah, because when I first come to Sydney, when I started going around the clubs, I didn't see any blackfellas at all, really. And because it was in Walgett where I first met Jimmy. He was up there with the Col I show, and along with Judy Stone and Rex Dallas. And of course, I met Jimmy there through his wife, who was related to me, Marge. And of course, when I come to Sydney, I went over and I got in touch with her, and she said, "Come over. I want to, I'll introduce you to Jimmy," which I did, and that's how we sort of got known on that. And yeah, because he was, established artist at that time. He was big. Along with him and a fellow called Harold Blair, who was an opera singer. He had a great voice, yeah.
And I believe Jimmy was the first to appear on Bandstand, but you also were on Bandstand.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get on Bandstand one time, and I was on there. I remember that time. I was scared too, along there with Col I was on there that time, and he, a great man.
Can you recall what song you sang on Bandstand?
Yeah, there was one of Jerry and the Pacemakers called "How Do You Do, What You Do to Me," and I was going to sing another one, and I didn't get around to it. A Roy Orbison song was called "Distant Drums."
Now, during the early, I think it's in the early 60s, you were part of an all-coloured show.
Yeah, that was a great show we had, because a lot of the artists sadly are no longer with us, and of course we had a fellow called Freddie Little, which is Jimmy's brother. He had a magnificent voice, and he could sing the song like one Elvis sing, "The Wanderer View," beautiful. And there was a guy from down Narandra way. His name was Noel Stanley. He too also had a beautiful voice. He used to sing a lot of the Slim Whitman songs. And then there was a lady by the name of Betty Fisher. She helped a lot of Aboriginal people get established. And but she was a jazz. She could sing anything. But we had a beautiful show. And at the time, we used the band that we had. There were three white fellas, but they were great people. Dave Bridge, tremendous guitarist, and his drummer and bass player. That's all we used until later on that Jimmy got in touch with a fellow by the name of Cyril Green, and Cyril come down along with Jimmy's brother-in-law, and they formed the Aboriginal band there. And we had another group at that time too called the Opals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And did the group tour all around Australia?
The Opals, just about, yeah.
In 1972, you released your first record, Protest.
Yeah.
How well did that sell?
Oh, that did very, very well for me. I got a surprise how well it went, and of course it was during that time in Tamworth. I was on the Jimmy Little show when this lady from Opal Records, she heard me sing, and after we finished the show, she raced around the backstage and she said to me, asked if I was recorded with anyone yet. I said no. She said, "Would you like to come and do a recording for us?" I said, "Oh, that'd be great. I'll give it a go." So I put down 4. It was a little EP called "I'm Not the Boy I Used to Be," "Protest," and I think "Snakes Crawl at Night," and one of Jim Reeves' song, "Waltzing on Top of the World." Yeah, and so that did very well for me.
Now, in January 1973 would have to have been a proud year for you, winning the first, a golden guitar, being the first Aboriginal.
Yes, it came as a surprise to me when the fellow from Opal Records rang up and said, "I want you to come up to Tamworth." He said, "Don't ask any questions." He said, "Just come up if you can, please. We want you up here." So I said, oh, okay, I'll go up. And of course, we were at the show that night, and when they announced it, I just didn't know what to do. I said, there's a lot of great artists around, but I wouldn't say no.
And also that particular year you released your second album, Black Gold.
Yes, that was the first album, Black Gold, and I released. Jimmy wrote a song for me that I released on that first one, which was called Australia Down Under, and that did very well for me.
And in 1979 you were inducted into the Hands of Fame in Tamworth?
Yes, that was another great event too. Never forget that.
And you also toured with Brian Young.
Yes, along with him and Norm Bodkin, there was a great little fella. Sadly, he's passed on, but we went way up top of Australia, a lot of the remote places, and we had a wonderful time there. And the people, they just loved us and loved Norm Bodkin and loved Brian, because Brian said to me one time, he said, the Aboriginal people, he said, they helped me when I was down and out. He said, they stuck by me. Even Slim said, Slim Dusty, he said they always stuck by him, the Aboriginal people, and he always had a lot of respect for the Aboriginal people. They both did.
Okay, during the 60s, 70s, what would be your most memorable time?
Oh, there's a lot of wonderful things happened in my life, and I guess as you go along in life, you get the good times and the bad times, and I guess appearing, singing on around clubs and that, making people happy, and recording and winning a golden guitar. Yes, it's it was wonderful.
And is there anyone that you would have loved to have performed with that you haven't?
You mean Australia or America or anywhere?
All over the world.
Well, one of my favourite, greatest singers, I heard a lot of singers in my time, but one of my favourite was the late and great Roy Orbison. And I was very lucky that I met him. I went to one of his shows one night, and I saw his wife then. She said, come around the back, I'll introduce you to him. And that was one of the fondest memories of my life, meeting Roy Orbison.
Roy Orbison.
Yeah. Because I love Buddy Holly, Marty Robbins, and a lot of the Australian artists like Slim Dusty, Cole Joy, a lot of those too. But Roy and Marty and Jim Reeves, they just sort of stand out with me.
And in later years, Cole, you've worked at Taronga Park Zoo.
Yeah, you've been doing that for a few years now. I worked during the time I was performing around clubs. That I had a daytime job with the Sydney Water, and of course, when I left Sydney Water, I retired from Sydney Water. The fellow there from the education centre there at Taronga Park Zoo, we call him Mags, but his name Paul McGuire. He's good friends with my son, and he's asked me if I'd like to go around the schools with him, because he's an educator. He goes around the schools talking about animals, but he said children want to know more about the Dreamtime stories about the animals. He said, would you like to come and, with me? I was thinking, I don't know. I thought about it, and I said, all right, we'll give it a go. And been doing it ever since, and we tour just about all, go as far as Broken Hill, Wilcannia, Burke, Brewarrina, a lot of those places down south, and up Lismore, and further up too, yeah.
And in 2007, you were awarded the Australian Medal, the Order of Australia.
Yeah. There was, all through a very good friend of mine, Cyril Green was his name, and he was one of the members of the Jimmy Little Trio. It was all through him that he wrote, and sort of recommended me for it, and that was really a surprise, winning the Order of Australia, because only certain people win that sort of, if you're lucky enough, and I was just one of those lucky persons, I guess.
And when was your last recording?
It was Remember Me, I think was the last one. Now, hopefully this year I'm going to release another one. I've just waiting on a couple more songs, and then there is a special song I want to do this year, and it's about people with a disability, because I have a little grandson who's autistic. And a friend of mine, I was telling my friend Eddie Lowe, who's a great country singer, he's from New Zealand. And I was telling him about my grandson who's autistic. He said, I've got a song. He said, have a listen to it. And it's just a beautiful song, and I'm going to record that soon. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That'll be excellent.
Yes.
And also, Cole, what advice would you give to whether Aboriginal or white people, upcoming artists, you know, who want to break into the...
Oh, yeah. As I said, you'll get your ups and downs in it, you know. One day it's all right, another day you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to do this anymore. But you got to keep going, no matter what. Keep at it. If you have a dream to do something, just do it, no matter what. And that's what my mum said, you go and do it. You can always come back home if you don't like it. But I just thought of what she said, and I said, I've got to do this. Not only for myself, but for other Aboriginal people too, to see me up there on stage, which I had Aboriginal people come up and say, you know, it's great you're an Aboriginal to see you up on stage and doing what you're doing. And that means a lot to me too.
Because I must admit, you and Jimmy Little definitely opened the doors for a lot of your people.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, because there's a great friend of mine, Roger Knox, who was a great artist, and he said to me, he said, I watched you in Tamworth one night, he said, and he had me autograph. He said, I want to be like that fella, get up on stage and sing, and you know. So if you can inspire someone, I think it's wonderful.
And talking about singing, would you like to sing a song?
Oh well, we'll give it a go, yes. Dear Mama, I'm coming home tomorrow. If you don't mind, would you meet me at the train? Dear Mama, my wandering days are over, and it's so good to be coming home again. Dear Mama, we'll walk the fields together, and through the valley we will stroll hand in hand. I just can't wait to see you and touch the soil of home so clean. But Mama, I'm not the boy I used to be, for I've been gone away too long, and I've done everything that's wrong. But I think I finally found myself at last, and just you wait and see, another chance is all I need. But Mama, I'm not the boy I used to be. You see, Mama, I spent time in prison for crime that I'm too ashamed to tell. And when you meet me there tomorrow, don't be surprised at what you see, 'cause Mama, I'm not the boy I used to be, for I've been gone away too long, and I've done everything that's wrong. But I think I finally found myself at last, and just you wait and see. Another chance is all I need. But Mama, I'm not the boy I used to be.